The question is, how do we keep America safe from terrorism? Trump says we ought to close that internet thing. The question really is, what does he mean by that? Like they do in North Korea? Like they do in China? Rubio says we should collect all Americans' records all of the time. The Constitution says otherwise. I think they're both wrong. I think we defeat terrorism by showing them that we do not fear them. I think if we ban certain religions, if we censor the internet, I think that at that point the terrorists will have won. Regime change hasn't won. Toppling secular dictators in the Middle East has only led to chaos and the rise of radical Islam. I think if we want to defeat terrorism, I think if we truly are sincere about defeating terrorism, we need to quit arming the allies of ISIS. If we want to defeat terrorism, the boots on the ground need to be Arab boots on the ground. As Commander-in-Chief, I will do whatever it takes to defend America. But in defending America, we cannot lose what America stands for. Today is the Bill of Rights anniversary. I hope we will remember that and cherish that in the fight on terrorism.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Kasich.
Thank you, Wolf. This last weekend,
Senator Paul, I know this has been a very big issue for you. You hear many of your colleagues are calling for increased surveillance by law enforcement. You call that hogwash. Why is that hogwash?
You know, I think Marco gets it completely wrong here. We are not any safer through the bulk collection of all Americans' records. In fact, I think we're less safe. We get so distracted by all of the information, we're not spending enough time getting specific information on terrorists. The other thing is the one thing that might have stopped Senator Bernardino, that might have stopped 9/11, would have been stricter controls on those who came here. And Marco has opposed at every point increased security, border security for those who come to our country. On his Gang of Eight bill, he would have liberalized immigration, but he did not, and he steadfastly opposed any new border security requirements for refugees or students. Last week, I introduced another bill saying we need more security, we need more scrutiny. Once again, Marco opposed this. So Marco can't have it both ways. He thinks he wants to be this, oh, I'm great and strong on national defense, but he's the weakest of all the candidates on immigration. He is the one for an open border that is leaving us defenseless. If we want to defend the country, we have to defend against who's are coming in. And Marco has more of an allegiance to Chuck Schumer and to the liberals than he does to conservative policy.
I want to thank Rand for another 30 seconds because, number one, what he's pointing to is a bill last week, an amendment he voted for that only 10 people voted for. You know why? Because it's not focused on terrorists. It would have banned anyone from coming here. Someone from Taiwan would not have been able to come here as a tourist. Number two, this program, this metadata program, is actually more strict than what a regular law enforcement agency has now. If a regular law enforcement agency wants your phone records, all they have to do is issue a subpoena. But now the intelligence agency is not able to quickly gather records and look at them to see who these terrorists are calling. And the terrorist that attacked us in San Bernardino was an American citizen, born and raised in this country. And I bet you we wish we would have had access to 5 years of his records so we could see who he was working with.
Governor Christie, you have heard.
Dana.
Governor Christie, I'll come to you in a minute.
Since that was mentioned in the question, can I respond?
Go ahead, please.
Marco still misunderstands the immigration issue. What I put forward was an amendment that would have temporarily halted immigration from high-risk terrorist countries, but it would have started it up, but I want them to go through global entry, which is a program where we do background checks. The thing is that every terrorist attack we've had since 9/11 has been legal immigration. Marco wants to expand that. I want more rules, more scrutiny, and to defend the country, you have to defend the border.
Senator, we're going to talk about immigration in a while. But Governor Christie,
don't I get another 30 seconds? He mentioned me again.
Senator Paul, you said ISIS grew stronger because of the hawks in your party. Do you really think that Republicans have fueled the rise of ISIS?
I think that by arming the allies of ISIS, the Islamic rebels against Assad, that we created a safe space or made that space bigger for ISIS to grow. I think those who have wanted regime change have made a mistake. When we toppled Gaddafi in Libya, I think that was a mistake. I think ISIS grew stronger. We have a failed state and we are more at risk. I'd like to also go back to, though, another question, which is Donald Trump a serious candidate? The reason I ask this is if you're going to close the internet, realize, America, what that entails. That entails getting rid of the First Amendment, okay? It's no small feat. If you are going to kill the families of terrorists, realize that there's something called the Geneva Convention we're going to have to pull out of. It would defy every norm that is America. So when you ask yourself, whoever you are that think you're going to support Donald Trump, think, do you believe in the Constitution? Are you going to change the Constitution?
Mr. Trump.
So they can kill us, but we can't kill them. That's what you're saying. And as far as the internet is concerned, I'm not talking about closing the internet. I'm talking about parts of Syria, parts of Iraq, where ISIS is, spotting it. Now, you could close it. What I like even better than that is getting our smartest and getting our best to infiltrate their internet so that we know exactly where they're going, exactly where they're going to be. I like that better. But we have to... Who would be... I just can't imagine somebody booing. These are people that want to kill us, folks. And you're objecting to us infiltrating their conversations? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Senator Paul. Senator Paul, I want to go back to my initial question, which is you saying that ISIS grew stronger because of hawks in your party. And do you think that your own party, the people who you're describing, are responsible for the rise of ISIS?
I think that if you believe in regime change, you're mistaken. In 2013, we put 600 tons of weapons, us, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, into the war against Assad. By pushing Assad back, we did create a safe space. We had people coming to our Foreign Relations Committee and saying, oh, we need to arm the allies of al-Qaeda. They are still saying this. It is a crazy notion. This is the biggest debate we should be having tonight, is regime change a good idea? Has it been a good idea? There are still people, the majority on the stage, they want to topple Assad. And then there'll be chaos, and I think ISIS will then be in charge of Syria.
Senator, we're going to talk about regime change in a bit, but Governor Kasich, would you like to respond?
You agree? Senator Paul. Senator Paul. Was getting rid of Saddam Hussein a pretty good deal?
These are the fundamental questions of our time, these foreign policy questions, whether or not regime change is a good idea or a bad idea. I don't think because I think the regime change was a bad idea, it means that Hussein was necessarily a good idea. There's often variations of evil on both sides of the war. What we have to decide is whether or not regime change is a good idea. It's what the neoconservatives have wanted. It's what the vast majority of those on the stage want. They still want regime change. They want it in Syria. They wanted it in Iraq. They wanted it in Libya. It has not worked. Out of regime change, you get chaos. From the chaos, you've seen repeatedly the rise of radical Islam. So we get this profession of, oh my goodness, they want to do something about terrorism, and yet they're the problem because they allow terrorism to arise out of that chaos.
Thank you, Senator. Go ahead.
Senator Paul, let me ask you, you heard Governor Kasich say Assad must go. Do you agree?
No, I think it's a huge mistake. I think regime change in Syria, and this is what I've been saying this for several years now. In 2013, when we first went in, I said, you're going to give arms to the allies of al-Qaeda, to radical jihadists? That's crazy. But the other thing I said is the great irony is you'll be back fighting against your own weapons. Had Assad been bombed when he used chemical weapons 2 years ago, ISIS would be in charge of all of Syria now. We have to have a more realistic foreign policy and not a utopian one where we say, oh, we're going to spread freedom and democracy and everybody in the Middle East is going to love us.
Governor
They're not
Kasich,
going
a
to
huge
love
mistake.
us.
In foreign policy.
Senator Paul. Senator Paul, I want you to respond to what we just heard from Governor Christie. If there was a no-fly zone, you say that potentially could lead to World War III. Why?
Well, I think if you're in favor of World War III, you have your candidate. You know, here's the thing. My goodness, what we want in a leader is someone with judgment, not someone who is so reckless as to stand on the stage and say, yes, I'm jumping up and down. I'm going to shoot down Russian planes. Russia already flies in that airspace. It may not be something we're in love with the fact that they're there, but they were invited by Iraq and by Syria to fly in that airspace. And so if we announce that we're going to have a no-fly zone, and others have said this, Hillary Clinton's also for it, It is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for World War III. We need to confront Russia from a position of strength, but we don't need to confront Russia from a point of recklessness that would lead to war. This is something, this type of judgment, it's having that kind of judgment, who you would appoint and how you're going to conduct affairs, that is incredibly important. I mean, I think when we think about the judgment of someone who might want World War III, we might think about someone who might shut down a bridge because they don't like their friends. They don't want to, they want to get a Democrat. So I think we need to be very careful about
Governor
that.
Christie.
Well, Wolf, I'll tell you.
Senator Paul, you oppose letting in Syrian refugees at this time into the United States. The U.S. has already accepted 2,000 Syrian refugees, including 13 living here in Las Vegas right now. Would you send them back? What would you do with these people?
I think we need to set the record straight on this because I think Marco misspoke about the bill. On the Gang of Eight bill, there was no provisions really for extra scrutiny or safety for refugees. At the time the bill came up, 2 Iraqi refugees came to my hometown, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Their fingerprints were on a bomb from Iraq. They were in the database, but we didn't pick them up. We relocated them here, put them in government housing, got them on food stamps, and we began providing for them, but we didn't have adequate security. On the Gang of Eight bill, on Marco's bill, we had an opportunity. There was a conservative consensus for an amendment I put forward called Trust But Verify that would have strengthened border security on both refugees, students, and those coming here. And Marco sided and was, I guess, more sympathetic to Chuck Schumer and to the president than he was to conservative principles. But this goes directly to national defense. And if he wants to run as a national defense conservative, he's got to explain why he hasn't stepped up to support border security.
Senator Rubio.
Well, as he's just admitted, the reason why those refugees were allowed in is because they messed up in how they used the actual database. They should have known. They didn't because they didn't run the actual law as it exists now. It didn't work well. As far as the refugees are concerned, it's not that America doesn't want to accept refugees, Wolf. It's that we may not be able to because this is an issue we have to be 100% right on. If we allow 9,999 Syrian refugees into the United States, and all of them are good people, but we allow one person in who's an ISIS killer, we just get one person wrong. We got a serious problem. And there is not a single person in the national defense apparatus of this country that can guarantee you we're going to be 100% right. And that's why, as president, I'll take this very seriously.
Senator Paul, you didn't answer the question about the 2,000 Syrian refugees who are already here in the United States. Will you send them back or let them stay?
What my bill would do would be only for refugees going forward. So I haven't taken a position on sending anyone home, but I have taken the position that we have a lot of problems here in our country, and that one of the things that we do, charity is about giving your own money. Charity isn't giving someone else's money. To put everyone on government housing and food stamps and bring them in from around the world, I think is a mistake. To give of your own money, I've given to my church. My church has helped people that came from Bosnia. That's a good thing. But we shouldn't have a program where we just say that we're going to take care of the world's refugees. Nobody in the Middle East is doing anything. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, all the Gulf nations are doing nothing. They need to step up and take refugees.
We have another question. We have another question from second, Senator Paul.
The greatest threat to our national security is our debt. We borrow $1 million a minute, and whose fault is it? Well, frankly, it's both parties' fault. You have those on the right who clamor and say, oh, we must spend anything on the military, and those on the left who say the same for domestic welfare. But what most Americans don't realize is there's an unholy alliance. They come together, there's a secret handshake. We spend more money on everything. And we are not a stronger nation if we go further into debt. We are not projecting power from bankruptcy court. To me, there is no greater threat than our debt. I'm the only fiscal conservative on the stage because I'm willing to hold the line on all spending. I hope you'll consider me in the election. Thank you very much.